My father always called teaching a safe little life with a low ceiling, the kind of job you settle for when you lack ambition. He preferred my brother's flashy finance bonuses. But sitting under those blinding studio lights with a national audience watching, I realized the truth when the camera tallied the millions of dollars stolen from my students. My father wasn't looking at a lowly teacher anymore. He was looking at a woman he should have feared. The receipt in my pocket crinkled every time I shifted in my chair, a jagged little reminder of the $42.16 I had spent at the drugstore that morning. It was not for coffee or lipstick. It was for composition notebooks, a pack of mechanical pencils, and a box of tissues, because the district refused to supply them until, as they put it, the fiscal quarter aligned with the procurement cycle. I looked out at my third period English class. 28 teenagers were slumped over desks that had been purchased when I was in elementary school. The varnish was peeling off the wood in sharp, yellowed flakes that caught on sweaters. "Review your thesis statements," I said. "I want them strong. I want them to have teeth." A hand went up in the back. It was Leo, a quiet kid who wore the same hooded sweatshirt every day, because I suspected it was the warmest thing he owned. Miss Foster. Leo said, "My pencil broke." I walked back to my desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out one of the new ones I had bought 3 hours ago. I handed it to him. "Keep it," I said. This was the rhythm of Briar Glen High. We were a public school in a city that was trying desperately to gentrify its way out of a slump, which meant we had sleek new digital signs in the hallway that scrolled motivational quotes. But we did not have paper towels in the second-floor bathrooms. We had a superintendent who drove a luxury sedan, but we had textbooks held together by duct tape and hope. I checked my email while the students wrote. There was a new message from the central office. The subject line read, "Update on supply chain logistics. Dear faculty," it began, "due to unforeseen vendor renegotiations, the discretionary budget for classroom consumables is paused for another 3 weeks. Please utilize digital alternatives where possible." I deleted the email. Digital alternatives did not help Leo write an essay when he did not have a laptop at home. I touched the receipt in my pocket again. $42 was not a fortune, but on a teacher's salary in this economy, it was the difference between putting gas in my car on Friday or waiting until Monday. I closed my eyes for a second. Just teach. Julia, just do the job. But the job was becoming impossible. That Sunday, I drove 20 minutes out to the suburbs to the house I grew up in. My parents, Martin and Elaine Foster, lived in a sprawling colonial on a cul-de-sac where the lawns were manicured to within an inch of their lives. It was the kind of house that announced its value the moment you pulled into the driveway. I parked my 10-year-old sedan behind my brother Connor's brand-new sports car. The contrast was so sharp it almost looked like a joke setup. Inside, the house smelled of roast beef and expensive floor wax. My mother was in the kitchen, arranging garnish on a platter with the precision of a surgeon. "Julia," she said without looking up, "you look tired. Are you drinking enough water?" "I am fine." "Mom," I said, "just a long week." My father walked in, holding a glass of scotch. He looked at me, then at my shoes, then back at my face. It was the same appraisal he gave a struggling stock. "Connor is already here," my father said. "He just closed a massive deal. The bonus alone is going to be more than what your principal makes in a year." I felt the familiar tightening in my chest. That is great for him. Dad. We sat down to dinner. The table was set with the good china, the stuff we were not allowed to touch as children. Connor sat opposite me, radiating the golden glow of a man who has never had to worry about the price of milk. He was 31, 2 years younger than me, but he looked 5 years younger because stress had never etched a single line into his face, so Connor said, "Spearing a potato? I am thinking about buying a boat. Nothing huge, just something to take out on the lake on weekends." "A boat," my mother said, her eyes lighting up. "That sounds wonderful. Connor, you have worked so hard. You deserve a little recreation. What about you?" "Julia," my father asked. He did not look at me. He was cutting his meat. Still saving up for that trip to Europe I had been saving for a trip to Italy since I was 25. Every time I got close, something happened. A car repair, a rent hike, a student who needed a winter coat that I could not ethically ignore. I am getting there. I said, it is a slow process. My father put his knife down. It clattered against the porcelain. You know, he said, leaning back, I was talking to Bob Miller the other day. His daughter just made partner at her firm. She is your age. Here we go. Teaching is noble work. Julia, my father said, I am not saying it isn't, but let us be honest. It is a safe life. It is small. It is not small. I said, keeping my voice steady. I teach 150 students a year. I help them get into college. I help them learn how to think. But where does it go? My mother asked. She reached out and patted my hand, a gesture that felt more like pity than affection. You have a low ceiling, honey. We just want you to be secure. Connor is building wealth. You are just surviving. I am doing what I love. I said. My father scoffed. You can love a hobby. Julia, a career should provide leverage. You have no leverage. You are a cog in a machine that does not care about you. He was right about the machine, but he was wrong about the rest. I looked at Connor. He gave me a sympathetic shrug, but his eyes were vacant. He did not understand. He measured his worth in quarterly returns. I measured mine in the moment a kid finally understood how to use a semicolon, or the day a student who never spoke finally raised their hand, but sitting there, eating roast beef I could not afford to buy. I felt small. I felt exactly the way they saw me. A lowly teacher, a woman who had settled. The blow came on Tuesday morning. I was in the faculty lounge, waiting for the coffee machine to sputter to life, when the email blasted out to the entire staff. Subject Strategic Realignment of Academic Support Services. I opened it. Buried under 3 paragraphs of corporate buzzwords about synergy and optimization was a single brutal sentence effective immediately. The after-school peer tutoring program will be suspended pending a comprehensive efficiency review. I stared at the phone. The tutoring program was the only lifeline for at least 50 of our struggling students. It provided a safe place for them to go. A snack, and help with their homework. This has to be a mistake, I said aloud. Harlan DeWitt, the history teacher who had been at Briar Glen since the building opened in the 70s, looked up from his newspaper. Harlan was a man who had seen everything come and go: administrators, initiatives, curriculum overhauls. He had a face like crumpled parchment and eyes that missed nothing. It is not a mistake. Julia, Harlan said, it is a robbery. I walked over to his table. What do you mean? Look at the district website, he said. I pulled up the browser on my phone. There, on the front page of the Briar Glen School District site, was a bright, glossy banner image of smiling students holding textbooks. The headline read, District expands student success initiatives with fully funded support programs. I looked back at the email canceling the program. Then I looked at the website celebrating the funding. This makes no sense, I said. If it is fully funded, why are they cutting it? Harlan took a sip of his coffee. He looked around the lounge to make sure we were alone. Then he reached into his leather satchel and pulled out a piece of paper. I found this on the copier yesterday. He said, someone from the central office must have been in the building for a meeting and forgot they left it in the tray. I took the paper. It was a spreadsheet, printed in landscape mode. The columns were dense with numbers and budget codes. Look at line 42, Harlan said. I scanned down. Line 42. External consultant / curricular audit / Northbridge Learning Foundation. The amount listed next to it was $85,000. Who is the Northbridge Learning Foundation? I asked. I have never heard of them, Harlan said, and I have been the union rep for 20 years. But look at the date. That check was cut last week. That is $85,000 leaving the general fund for consulting at the exact same moment they tell us they cannot afford to pay Mrs. Higgins $20 an hour to run the tutoring lab. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. Can I keep this? I asked. Harlan nodded. Be careful. Julia, You start asking questions about money, and people stop being polite very quickly. I waited until my planning period to go to the main office. I wanted to believe there was a logical explanation. Maybe the spreadsheet was a draft. Maybe the grant money was restricted. The assistant principal, Dr. Aris Thorne, was a man who wore suits that were too shiny and smiled with too many teeth. He was new to the district this year, brought in to modernize operations. Dr. Thorne, I said, standing in the doorway of his glass-walled office. Do you have a moment? Julia, come in. Come in, he said, gesturing to a chair. How are things in the trenches? Fine, I said. I actually wanted to ask about the tutoring program. I saw the email. Ah, yes, he said, his smile dimming by a fraction. Unfortunate, very unfortunate, but necessary. We have to balance the books. I hesitated, then decided to push. It is just confusing, I said. I saw the press release on the district site saying we were fully funded, and I know there have been some large expenditures recently. I saw something about a consulting group called North Bridge. The air in the room changed instantly. It was not a physical shift, but the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Doctor? Thorne stopped tapping his pen on the desk. He placed it down, perfectly parallel to his notebook. Where did you hear that name? He asked. His voice was soft, but the warmth was gone. I just saw it around. I lied. I was just wondering if their services could be used to help the tutoring program instead of cutting it. Doctor? Thorne stared at me for a long 5 seconds. It was an assessment. He was trying to figure out how much I knew and who I had been talking to. Julia, he said, leaning forward, you are a fantastic teacher. Your test scores are excellent. The students love you. Thank you, I said, but you need to understand something about administration. He continued, it is a complex ecosystem. There are moving parts you cannot see from the classroom. When teachers start worrying about line items and vendors, they lose focus on what matters. He stood up, signaling the meeting was over. Questions like that make people nervous. Julia, he said, they create unnecessary friction. My advice, focus on what is inside your classroom. Let us handle the money. He smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. It was a dismissal, and it was a warning. I walked out of the office with my heart hammering against my ribs. He hadn't denied it. He hadn't explained it. He had just told me to shut up. 2 days later, the theoretical corruption became a physical crisis. It was 3 p.m. Right after the final bell, the hallways were a chaotic river of students heading to buses and sports practice. I was standing by my door, monitoring the flow, when I heard a scream from down the hall. It wasn't a playful scream. It was the guttural, terrified sound of someone in real danger. I ran. I pushed through the crowd until I saw a circle forming near the lockers. On the floor, a sophomore named Davis was clawing at his throat. His face was turning a terrifying shade of red, and his lips were swelling rapidly. Allergic reaction. I thought instantly. Call the nurse, I shouted to the nearest student. Run! I dropped to my knees beside Davis. He was wheezing, his eyes wide with panic. He couldn't speak. Davis, look at me. I said, do you have an EpiPen? He shook his head frantically. He patted his pockets. Nothing. I grabbed his backpack and dumped it out on the floor. Books, gym clothes, a crushed bag of peanuts. That was the culprit. But no injector. The student I had sent to the nurse came sprinting back, looking pale. She is not there, he yelled. The office is locked. The nurse was shared between 3 schools. It was Thursday. She was at the elementary school across town. Break the glass, I yelled at another teacher who had run up, pointing to the emergency medical cabinet mounted on the wall near the water fountain. Get the district stock EpiPen, Mr. Henderson, the gym teacher, grabbed a fire extinguisher and smashed the glass of the medical cabinet. He reached in and pulled out the yellow box. He tossed it to me. I caught it. I ripped the box open. It was empty. My stomach dropped into my shoes. The box was there, but the injector was gone. Stolen. Never replaced, it didn't matter. Davis was suffocating in front of me. I did not think. I just reacted. I knew I had an emergency kit in my car. My niece had severe allergies, and I carried a spare set of injectors in my glove box whenever I babysat her. "Stay with him," I screamed to Henderson. I ran. I ran faster than I had ever run in my life. I burst out the side doors, sprinted across the parking lot, my heels clacking on the asphalt. I fumbled with my keys, ripped the car door open, and tore into the glove box. I grabbed the twin pack. I sprinted back. My lungs were burning. When I got back to the hallway, Davis's eyes were rolling back in his head. I uncapped the blue safety release. I jammed the orange tip into his outer thigh and held it. 1, 2, 3, a gasp. Davis sucked in our ragged, desperate breath. The wheezing eased. The color began to drain from his purple face. I slumped back against the lockers, shaking. The empty district box lay on the floor next to me. A piece of cardboard trash that almost cost a boy his life. By the time the ambulance arrived, Davis was stable. The paramedics praised the quick response. The principal shook my hand, looking pale and sweaty. But that evening, the narrative began to twist. I was at home, sitting on my couch with a glass of cheap wine, trying to stop my hands from trembling, when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Foster. A woman's voice said, "This is Karen Vost from the District Communications Office." "Hello," I said. "First, we are so relieved the student is okay," she said. Her voice was like syrup smooth, sweet, and completely artificial. "We wanted to touch base regarding the media inquiries. The local news has picked up the story." "Okay," I said. "We are sending over a statement for you to approve," she said. "We want to make sure we highlight the preparedness of our staff. It is a great opportunity to share a positive message about how the district supports safety training." I frowned. Support Karen. The emergency cabinet was empty. The nurse was not there. I had to run to my car to get my own medication. There was a pause on the line, a long, heavy silence. "Ms. Foster," Karen said, her voice dropping an octave. "We are looking into the supply inventory discrepancy. But for the public-facing message, we need to focus on the outcome. The system worked because you worked. You are a district employee. Therefore, the district succeeded." I felt a flash of white-hot anger. "You want me to lie?" I said. "You want me to say you gave me the tools to save him when you actually left him to die?" "We want you to be a team player," she said. "I will email you the talking points. Please stick to them." She hung up. 10 minutes later, I saw the clip on the 6 o'clock news. The anchor was beaming. "A local hero at Briar Glen High," she said. "English teacher Julia Foster sprang into action today." Then the screen cut to a statement from the superintendent. "The safety of our students is our top priority. We are proud of our robust emergency protocols that allowed for this life-saving intervention. Robust emergency protocols." They were taking credit for my personal property and my cardio. I opened my laptop to check my email, wanting to see the talking points Karen had threatened me with, but I couldn't log in. Password incorrect. I typed it again. Password incorrect. That was strange. I hadn't changed it. I tried a third time. Finally, it let me in, but the system was moving like molasses. The cursor lagged. Windows opened and closed with a delay. A notification popped up in the corner of the screen. A calendar invite. Meeting stakeholder alignment. Time tomorrow. 4 p.m. Location district office. Conference room B. Organizer admin _004. No name. Just admin _004. And stakeholder alignment. That was corporate speak for get in line or get out. I closed the laptop. I felt a sudden, irrational urge to check the locks on my apartment door. The next morning, the school felt different. The other teachers patted me on the back, calling me a hero, but their eyes were anxious. They knew about the empty cabinet. The gossip had spread. Everyone knew the district had failed, and everyone knew the district was lying about it. I walked to my classroom. I always locked my door. It was a habit drilled into me from my first year of teaching. But when I reached room 304, The door was slightly ajar. Just an inch. I froze. I pushed it open slowly. The room looked normal at first glance. Desks in rows. Whiteboard clean. I walked to my desk. My chair was turned at a slightly different angle than I left it. I opened the bottom drawer, where I kept my student portfolio samples of their writing throughout the year. It wasn't sensitive data. It wasn't grades or social security numbers. It was just essays. The blue folder was gone. It was a folder containing essays from 3 specific students: Leo, the boy with the broken pencil, and 2 others who had written about the lack of resources in the school for a persuasive writing assignment. I searched the other drawers. Nothing else was missing. My laptop was there. My purse, which I had foolishly left locked in the bottom cabinet, was untouched. Only the evidence of the students' complaints was gone. It was not a robbery. It was a sanitization. I sat down in my chair. The room was silent, but the air felt heavy, charged with a threat I couldn't quite see. I thought about my father's voice at the dinner table. "You are a cog in a machine that does not care about you." He was wrong. The machine didn't just not care. The machine was hungry. It was eating the budget. It was eating the supplies. It was eating the truth. And now, it was coming for me. I reached into my bag and pulled out a fresh composition notebook, one of the ones I had bought with my own money. I opened it to the first page. I uncapped a pen. I was not going to stick to the talking points. I was not going to be a team player. I wrote the date at the top of the page. Then I wrote, "Harlan gave me the spreadsheet on Tuesday. The emergency cabinet was empty on Thursday. They stole the student essays on Friday." I was not writing a novel. I was building a case. If they wanted to play games with my livelihood and my students' lives, they were going to find out that the lowly teacher knew how to do her homework. I documented everything, not because I wanted to take anyone down. I just wanted to teach English. But I looked at the empty spot in the drawer where Leo's essay used to be. And I realized something. They had made this personal. Leo had written about how cold the classrooms were in the winter. He had written about how it felt to be forgotten. Someone had read that and decided it was dangerous enough to steal. I closed the notebook and shoved it deep into my bag. Let them come. I thought, I am ready. The bell rang. First period began. I stood up, put a smile on my face, and turned to face the door. But the Julia Foster who greeted the students that morning was not the same woman who had bought pencils 3 days ago. That woman was gone. The woman who remained was angry, and she was paying attention. The library at Briar Glen High was usually my sanctuary, a place that smelled of old paper and dust, a scent that promised order in a chaotic world. But when I walked in on Tuesday morning during my prep period, the air felt thin, like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Marla Kendricks was behind the circulation desk. She had been the librarian here for 25 years. A woman who wore cardigans regardless of the season and guarded the stacks with the ferocity of a dragon sitting on gold. Today, however, she looked defeated. She was staring at a computer screen, her lips pressed into a thin white line. "Marla," I said softly. She jumped, her hand flying to her chest. "Julia, you startled me." I walked around the desk. Marla was not the type to be startled. She was the type to shush a varsity linebacker from 40 feet away. "What is wrong?" I asked. Marla looked at the door to the hallway, checking to see if anyone was listening. Then she turned her monitor slightly so I could see. It was a digital inventory list, a graveyard of red text. "I put the order in 3 months ago," she whispered. "New copies of To Kill a Mockingbird, graphic novels for the reluctant readers, a subscription to a digital research archive for the seniors, $6,000 worth of materials." And I asked, "And they are gone?" She said, "Look at the status." I leaned in. Next to every item, the status read, "Cancelled, insufficient funds/vendor discrepancy." "But the budget was approved in August." I said, "I saw the minutes from the board meeting. The library grant was a specific line item. It is protected money." Marla laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "That is what I thought," she said. "So I called the district procurement office. I spoke to a woman named Sheila. She told me the funds were reallocated for critical infrastructure upgrades and that the vendor contracts had expired. Critical infrastructure, I repeated. We still have buckets in the hallway when it rains. Marla. What infrastructure? Marla opened a drawer and pulled out a physical ledger. It was an old-fashioned green record book. She opened it to a page covered in her neat, looping handwriting. I have been tracking it, she said. Every time a request gets bounced, I write it down. It started small last year. A few magazines, a replacement bulb for the projector. But in the last 6 months, it is a hemorrhage. Julia. I think the library budget is 0. I think it exists on paper, but the actual account is empty. I looked at the ledger. Thousands of dollars. Vanished into the ether of district bureaucracy. Can I have a copy of this? I asked. Marla hesitated. Her fingers hovered over the page. I retire in 2 years. Julia, she said, I need my pension. If they find out I am tracking their math, they will not find out from me. I promised. But Marla, if the money is not here, and it is not in the classrooms, where is it? She closed the book with a heavy thud. That is the question. Isn't it? She said. And I am afraid of the answer. I spent the next 2 days trying to find that answer through official channels. I was naive enough to think that if I just asked the right person, the confusion would clear up. I drafted a formal request for procurement records. Citing the Freedom of Information Act, though I softened the language to sound like a curious employee rather than an investigator, I sent it to the business office. 2 hours later, I received an automated reply. Thank you for your inquiry. Access to historical procurement data is temporarily unavailable due to a district-wide system migration. We apologize for the inconvenience. I frowned and forwarded the request to the superintendent's secretary. 20 minutes later, a reply. Ms. Foster. Unfortunately, those archives are offline during our current system migration. Please check back next quarter. It was a script. I tried the Human Resources Department, asking about the staffing budget for the tutoring program. System migration. I tried the Maintenance Department, asking about the cost of the non-existent infrastructure upgrades. System migration. They had built a wall of technical difficulties around the truth. It was perfect. You cannot argue with a computer glitch. You cannot interrogate a server update. They had simply turned off the lights and claimed the switch was broken. On Sunday, I met my brother Connor for brunch. We went to a place in the city called the Gilded Spoon, where the menu did not list prices, and the mimosas cost more than the hourly wage of the custodian at my school. Connor looked tired, but expensive tired. He was wearing a cashmere sweater that looked soft enough to sleep in. He ordered the steak and eggs without looking at the menu. How is the empire building going? I asked, stirring my coffee. He rubbed his face. It is intense. Jules, the market is volatile right now. Everyone is spooked. I have clients calling me at 3 a.m. asking if they should move their assets to gold or crypto or offshore accounts. He took a long drink of his mimosa. But we are managing, he said. We just picked up a new institutional client. Huge portfolio. It is actually kind of interesting. They are doing some really aggressive restructuring for tax efficiency. Oh, I said, trying to sound interested while I worried about whether I could afford the avocado toast I had just ordered. Yeah, he said, it is an education nonprofit. They act as a funnel for, well, it is complicated, but basically, they move capital between public sector grants and private service providers. It is brilliant. Actually, they call it the North Bridge Learning Foundation. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. The noise of the restaurant, the clatter of silverware, the laughter of the brunch crowd seemed to drop away. What did you say? I asked. North Bridge, Connor said, slicing into his steak. Why I set my cup down. My hand was shaking. Just a little. Connor, I said, that is the group I saw on a spreadsheet at school. They are the ones who were paid $85,000 for consulting right before our tutoring program was cut. Connor paused. He chewed slowly, his eyes flickering away from mine. Small world, he said. It is not a small world. Connor, it is my school. I leaned forward. What do they actually do? You said they move capital. What does that mean? He put his knife and fork down. His posture shifted. He went from relaxed brother to defensive professional in the span of a heartbeat. It is just financial structuring. Julia, he said, it is standard stuff. Nonprofits have overhead. They have vendors. They have to optimize their tax liabilities. You wouldn't understand how nonprofits work. It is not like balancing a checkbook. I understand that $85,000 disappeared from my district and went to them. I said, and you are saying they are a client of yours. Connor looked around the restaurant, as if checking to see if anyone was listening. Look, I do not know the specifics of every transaction, he said. I just handle the investment side. They are a legitimate organization. They have a board. They have a charter. Who is on the board? I asked. He picked up his napkin and dabbed his mouth. Why are you interrogating me? He asked. I thought we were having brunch. I am not interrogating you. I said, I am worried. My students are losing everything. Connor, no books, no tutors, no nurse supplies, and now you tell me this foundation is moving money around for efficiency. Connor signaled the waiter for the check, cutting the meal short. You are being dramatic. Jules, he said, it is business. Sometimes budgets get cut. It sucks, but it happens. Do not make a conspiracy out of accounting. He pulled out his credit card. It was a heavy black metal card that made a distinct thunk when he dropped it on the tray. Let us talk about something else. He said, how is Mom? He changed the subject so fast it gave me whiplash. He refused to meet my eyes for the rest of the meal, and as I watched him sign the receipt with a flourish, I realized something that made my stomach turn. He knew. He might not know the details of the stolen pencils or the missing books, but he knew the money wasn't clean, and he didn't care. The following Wednesday, a heavy cream-colored envelope appeared in my mailbox at school. Inside was an invitation on thick cardstock. You are cordially invited to the superintendent's Teacher Voice Roundtable, hosted by board member Denise Arkwell. Theme: authenticity in the modern classroom. Denise Arkwell. She was the board member who always smiled too much in photos. She had run her campaign on a platform of transparency and innovation, which usually meant she liked iPads and disliked unions. I didn't want to go, but if I wanted to understand the machine, I had to look at the gears. The roundtable was held in the district's Professional Development Center, a room with plush carpet and ergonomic chairs that cost more than my car. There were 12 teachers there, handpicked from across the district. Denise Arkwell swept into the room like a talk show host. She was wearing a tailored suit in a soft, approachable blue. She smelled of expensive vanilla perfume. Welcome, everyone, she beamed. She walked around the circle, shaking hands. When she got to me, she paused. Julia Foster, she said, holding my hand in both of hers, the hero of the hour. I saw the news clip. You were magnificent. I did what anyone would have done. I said, nonsense, she said. You showed grit. You showed authenticity. That is why you are here. She gestured to the back of the room. I hadn't noticed them when I walked in, but there were 2 camera crews setting up tripods. We are just going to capture some B-roll for the district website, Denise said effortlessly. We want the community to see that we listen to our educators. The roundtable began. It was not a discussion, it was a performance. Denise asked questions that were clearly designed to elicit specific, positive sound bites. How does the new digital curriculum empower your students? In what ways do you feel supported by the district's vision for the future? When the teachers answered. They hesitated. Looking at the cameras, they gave safe, vague answers. The technology is helpful. The vision is exciting. Then Denise turned to me. The red light on the camera blinked. Julia, she said, as someone who has faced a crisis head-on, tell us, how does it feel to know you have the full resources of the district behind you? The room went silent. The other teachers looked at their laps. They knew about the empty medical box. I looked at Denise. Her smile was fixed, frozen in place. She was waiting for the line. She was waiting for me to say, "It feels great. Denise, I thought about the receipt in my pocket. I thought about Marla's ledger. I thought about Connor's evasive eyes. It feels complicated." I said, Denise's smile faltered for a microsecond. Complicated, she laughed lightly. How so? Because resources are not just policies, I said. Resources are things you can touch. Bandages, books, tutors, when those things are missing. No amount of vision can replace them. The camera operator shifted. Denise stood up, clapping her hands together. Wonderful, she said. Such passion. That is exactly what we mean by authenticity. We are always striving to improve logistics, aren't we? She signaled the camera crew to cut. Okay, let us take a 5-minute break, she announced. She walked over to me while the others dispersed toward the snack table. She leaned in close. The vanilla scent was overpowering. You have a powerful voice. Julia, she said quietly. But be careful. What do you mean? I asked. Authenticity is a currency, she said. Spend it on the things that matter. Do not waste it on complaints about logistics. People get tired of negative narratives. We want you to be a leader. Leaders look forward, not backward. She patted my arm. It was the same gesture my mother used, a gesture of control disguised as comfort. Enjoy the pastries, she said, and walked away. I stood there, feeling like a prop that had accidentally spoken a real line in a play. The whole event was a sham. They didn't want our voices. They wanted our compliance. That night, I drove to Tessa's apartment. Tessa Moreau had been my best friend since college. She was a counselor at the community college, which meant she dealt with the fallout of our high school's failures every day. She saw the kids who graduated without being able to write a coherent paragraph. I paced around her small living room, recounting the week, the library, the migration, Connor, Denise. Tessa sat on the floor, hugging a throw pillow. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she didn't look angry. She looked scared. Julia, she said, you need to stop. I stopped pacing. What you are poking a bear, she said. And you are doing it with a stick made of righteous indignation. That stick is going to snap. They are stealing. Tessa, I said, it is systematic theft. I know, she said. I see the kids who come to me from your district. I know the system is broken, but look at who you are dealing with. Denise Arkwell is connected to the mayor. Your brother handles millions of dollars. These people have layers of protection. You have, what, a notebook and a bad attitude. I have the truth. I said. Tessa sighed. She stood up and grabbed my shoulders. You can be right and still get crushed, she said. History is full of people who were right and ended up unemployed, blacklisted, or worse, if you keep pulling this thread. The whole sweater is going to unravel, and you are going to be the one naked in the cold. I am already cold. Tessa, I said, my classroom is freezing because the heating vents are clogged and there is no budget to fix them. She looked into my eyes. She saw that I wasn't going to let it go. Okay, she said softly. If you are going to do this, you cannot do it alone, and you cannot do it stupidly. You need proof that they cannot spin. The proof came looking for me 2 days later. It was Friday night. I was grading papers at my kitchen table when a notification chimed on my laptop. New email. The sender was Truthseeker, 889 2protonmail.com. I opened it. Subject, you are looking in the wrong place. Ms. Foster, I heard about the questions you are asking. The system migration is a cover. The records exist. I work in district finance. I cannot send files over the server because they track outgoing attachments. If you want to see where the money is really going, meet me at the bench near the duck pond in Ellington Park, tomorrow morning, 7:00 a.m. Come alone. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was straight out of a spy movie. Ridiculous and terrifying all at once. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw spreadsheets burning. At 6:30 the next morning, I drove to the park. It was a gray, misty morning. The air was damp and cold. I parked my car 2 blocks away and walked. The park was empty except for a few joggers. I found the bench near the duck pond. I sat down. The wood was wet with dew. I waited. 7:00 came, then 7:10, then 7:15. No one approached. A man in a tracksuit ran past. Checking his watch, a woman walking a golden retriever smiled at me, but no one stopped. I felt a surge of disappointment. It was a prank. Or worse, it was a setup to see if I would show. I stood up to leave. As I shifted, my boot kicked something under the bench. I looked down. Taped to the underside of the wooden slats was a thick manila envelope. I glanced around. No one was watching. I crouched down, ripped the tape loose, and shoved the envelope under my coat. I walked back to my car, my heart racing so fast I thought I might pass out. I didn't open it until I was inside my apartment with the deadbolt thrown. I dumped the contents onto my table. It was a stack of invoices, copies, not originals. I picked up the top one. It was an invoice from a company called Apex Strategies. The bill was for $12,000. The description read, Media Coaching and Crisis Management Consulting. The billing code listed next to it was SPED-TIER-3. I froze. I knew that code. That was the special education budget line for severe disabilities. That was money meant for speech therapists, adaptive equipment, and paraprofessionals for children who couldn't walk or feed themselves. They were using money meant for disabled children to pay for media coaching. I flipped to the next page. Northbridge Learning Foundation. $50,000 for curriculum alignment review. Billed to the title. 1 grant money for low-income students. I went through the whole stack. It was a map of theft. They weren't just skimming off the top. They were gutting the most vulnerable programs to pay for consultants, PR firms, and strategic partners. I felt sick, physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and dry heaved over the sink. This wasn't just corruption. It was cruelty. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't sit on this. The district had an internal integrity hotline. It was plastered on posters in the break room. See something, say something. Anonymously report waste, fraud, and abuse. I scanned the documents. I wrote a cover letter, keeping it factual. I didn't use my name, but I detailed the invoice numbers and the budget code discrepancies. I submitted the report through the online portal at 10 a.m. on Saturday. I sat back, shaking. I expected an investigation. I expected to hear that an auditor would be assigned. At 11 a.m., my phone buzzed with an email notification from the portal. Status update on case 4492. I opened it. Case status resolved/closed. Administrator note. The flagged transactions have been reviewed and verified as compliant with district discretionary allocation protocols. No further action required. 1 hour. It took them 1 hour to review 20 pages of complex financial fraud and declare it legal. That was impossible. No one could have audited those invoices that fast, which meant they didn't audit them. They just flagged the report and killed it. I stared at the screen. The hotline wasn't there to catch fraud. It was there to catch the people reporting the fraud. It was a tripwire, and I had just stepped on it. By submitting that report, even anonymously, I had alerted them that someone had the invoices. They would know it was an insider. They would check the IP address. They would check the access logs. I stood up and paced my kitchen. I felt trapped. The walls of my apartment felt like they were closing in. Tessa was right. The system was rigged. The board, the finance office, the hotline. It was all one organism, protecting itself. I needed to go higher. I searched online for the State Department of Education Oversight Bureau. There was a tip line, a real one, theoretically independent of the district. I called the number. A recording played. You have reached the Office of Inspector General. Please leave a message. I didn't leave a message. I hung up. I needed to talk to a person. I found a direct number for a regional field office listed on an old PDF from 3 years ago. I dialed it. Ring, ring, ring. Field office. A tired male voice answered. Hello? I said, my voice tight. I have evidence of financial misappropriation in a public school district. Misuse of grant funds, special education funds. The man sighed. Which district, Briar Glen? I said. There was a pause. A long, heavy pause. Ma'am, the man said, his voice dropping. You are the third person to call about Briar Glen this month. I gripped the phone. You know. We have had tips, he said, unofficially. Then why aren't you doing anything I demanded? Why is it still happening? Because tips aren't testimony, he said. We open a file, we reach out to the witnesses, and then they recant, they quit, they move away. One of them suddenly got a very nice job in another state and stopped returning our calls. He sounded exhausted. He sounded like a man who had seen this movie before. If you want us to move, he said, we need someone who will go on the record, someone who will sign an affidavit and stand in front of a judge. And I have to warn you, ma'am, once you sign your name, we cannot stop what comes back at you. What comes back, I asked. Everything, he said. I looked at the invoices on my table. I looked at the code SPED-TIER-3. I am not going to recant. I said. The man hesitated. Okay, he said. I can set up an intake interview, but understand this until the paperwork is filed. You are on your own. I was preparing a war plan for myself. The binder on my dining room table was 2 inches thick. It was black, nondescript, and terrifying. Inside, I had organized every invoice, every email, and every handwritten note Marla had given me into a timeline that painted a picture of systematic theft. I was preparing for my interview with the State Oversight Office. The investigator, a woman named Agent Holloway, had given me strict instructions over the phone. Do not speculate, do not editorialize, bring documents, not grievances. I practiced in the mirror. On November 12th, $25,000 was transferred. Not they stole the money. The signature on the invoice matches the superintendent's approval stamp. Not he is a crook. I knew how this worked. If I showed anger, I became the hysterical woman. If I cried, I became the unstable teacher. To survive this, I had to be a machine. I had to be as cold and hard as the concrete foundation of the school building. I drank my coffee black. I put on my most conservative blazer. I was ready to be a witness, but the district struck first. On Tuesday afternoon, 2 days after I submitted my formal request for the interview, I was summoned to Dr. Thorne's office. I assumed it was about the upcoming state testing schedule. I walked in with my notebook, ready to take notes on proctoring assignments. Dr. Thorne was not alone, the district director of human resources. A woman named Sheila Vance, who always looked like she had just smelled something sour, was sitting in the corner. Close the door. Julia. Doctor, Thorne said. He did not smile. There was no talk of the trenches or the team today. I sat down. Sheila Vance placed a single sheet of paper on the desk in front of me. The header read, Performance Improvement Plan. I stared at the words. The letters seemed to swim. What is this? I asked. Julia. Doctor, Thorne said, clasping his hands. We have noticed a disturbing trend in your professional conduct over the last quarter. There have been concerns regarding your alignment with district goals, your tone in communications with administration, and a general resistance to collaborative culture. I looked up. My mouth fell open. My tone, I said, I have been Teacher of the Year twice. My evaluations have been perfect for 8 years. Past performance is not an immunity shield for current behavior. Sheila said. Her voice was like grinding glass. We have reports of you creating a hostile environment for support staff. You have been questioning established workflows in a way that suggests insubordination rather than constructive feedback. Questioning workflows. I repeated. You mean asking why the library has no books? You mean asking why the nurse's office was empty when a student almost died? This is exactly what we are talking about. Doctor, Thorne said, tapping the paper. This combativeness, it is unprofessional. Julia. It creates friction. He pushed the paper closer to me. This plan outlines the steps you need to take to return to good standing, he said. You will attend weekly mentoring sessions with an administrator. You will submit all communication with parents for prior review. And you will focus strictly on your assigned curriculum. And if I don't, I asked. Sheila smiled. It was a tight, predatory expression. Failure to meet the terms of a performance improvement plan is grounds for termination. She said, I looked at the document. It was vague. Improve tone. Demonstrate alignment. They were subjective traps. They could fire me for frowning in a faculty meeting and claim I wasn't aligned. This is retaliation. I said quietly, "You know I contacted the state, doctor." Thorne's face went blank. "We know nothing of the sort," he said smoothly. "This is purely about your performance. Julia, please sign at the bottom to acknowledge receipt." I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking, not with fear, but with a rage so hot I thought it might burn the paper. "I will sign that I received it." I said, "I will not sign that I agree with it." I scrawled my name. It looked jagged and angry. "Excellent, doctor," Thorne said, whisking the paper away. "Let us hope we see a turnaround. Julia, we would hate to lose you." The pressure didn't stop at the school doors. It followed me home, on Thursday night. My doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw my mother, Elaine. She was wearing a trench coat and holding a Tupperware container, the universal suburban offering of peace that usually came with a side of judgment. "Mom," I said, opening the door. I was in the neighborhood. She said, breezing past me into my small living room. She scanned the apartment, her eyes lingering on a stack of laundry I hadn't folded. "I brought you some lasagna. You never cook for yourself." "Thank you," I said. She set the container on the table and turned to face me. She didn't take off her coat. "Julia," she said, "I had lunch with Barb Miller today." Barb Miller was the biggest gossip in Briar Glen and the wife of a city councilman. "Okay," I said. "She asked me if you were having a breakdown." My mother said. I stiffened. "Excuse me." She said there are rumors. "Julia, rumors that you are causing drama at the high school, that you are shouting at administrators, that you are on some kind of crusade." "I am not shouting at anyone." I said, "I am doing my job, and I'm trying to stop people from stealing from my students." Elaine sighed. She reached out and picked a piece of lint off my shoulder. "Why does it always have to be you?" she asked. "Why do you always have to be the one who makes things difficult?" "I am not making things difficult." "Mom, the corruption is making things difficult." "Corruption," she scoffed. "That is a big word. You sound paranoid. Martin is worried sick. He has a reputation in this town." "Julia, Connor is building a business, and you are running around acting like a whistleblower." "I am a whistleblower." I said. Her face hardened. "Well, stop it," she said. "It is embarrassing. It looks desperate. You are 33 years old. You should be focusing on finding a husband, or buying a house, not fighting with the school board. Do you know how it reflects on us?" "On you," I laughed. "It was a harsh sound. This has nothing to do with you. We are a family. Julia, everything you do reflects on us. If you get fired and Barb says you are close to it, do not expect us to bail you out. We will not support this. Self-destruction." She walked to the door. "Eat the lasagna," she said. "You look thin. And for God's sake, keep your head down." She slammed the door. I stood in the silence, looking at the cold Tupperware. They didn't care if I was right. They didn't care if children were being robbed. They only cared that the neighbors were talking. The next morning, the bribe arrived. It came in the form of a phone call during my planning period. The number was from a prestigious area code in the state capital. "Ms. Foster," a smooth male voice said. "This is Marcus Trent from the North Bridge Learning Foundation." I froze. I slowly lowered myself into my chair. "Yes," I said. "I am calling with some exciting news," he said. His voice was warm, rich, and completely terrifying. "We have been tracking your work at Briar Glen. Your dedication to student literacy is impressive. We want to support that." I said nothing. I let the silence stretch. "We would like to offer you a teacher innovation grant," he continued. "It is a discretionary award we give to exceptional educators. $10,000 for your classroom, and a $5,000 personal stipend for you, to cover your time and research. $15,000. It was more money than I could save in 3 years. All we require," he said, "is a partnership agreement. You would become a Northbridge Fellow. You would write a few blog posts for our site about the benefits of private-public partnerships, and you would align your public messaging with our mission." Align. There was that word again. "And what is your mission?" I asked. "Efficiency," he said. "Innovation. moving beyond the old, tired narratives of public education failure. We want partners who are positive, who are forward-thinking. I looked at the stack of invoices I had hidden in my boot. I looked at the empty bookshelf where To Kill a Mockingbird should have been. So, I said slowly, if I take this money, I become a spokesperson for you. We prefer the term ambassador, he said. And ambassadors do not ask questions about consulting fees. Do they? I asked. The warmth in his voice evaporated instantly. Ms. Foster, he said, his tone dropping to a flat, corporate monotone. This is a generous offer. It is a career-making offer. Most teachers would be grateful. It would be a shame to let misunderstandings get in the way of your future. I think I will pass. Mr. Trent, I said. There was a pause. Suit yourself, he said. But remember, Ms. Foster, grants are limited, and so are opportunities. The line went dead. My hands were shaking when I put the phone down. They knew. They knew I was the one asking questions, and they had tried to buy me off, which meant they were scared. I needed to tell someone. I called Connor. He answered on the second ring, sounding breathless. I cannot talk long. Jules, he said, I am heading into a meeting. Connor, Northbridge just called me. I said, they tried to bribe me. There was a long silence on the other end. Then I heard a door close. What did they offer? He asked. His voice was hushed. $15,000. I said, to be a fellow, to shut up. Basically, did you take it? No, of course I didn't take it. Connor, this proves they are dirty. Julia, listen to me, he hissed. You need to drop this, now. Why? I asked. Because it embarrasses Dad. No, because these people do not lose. He shouted the words, whispering shouting in a way that was more frightening than a scream. You do not understand the scale of this. It is not just the school. It is connected to look. Just stop, please. Connected to what I asked. Connor, how do you know this? You said you just handled the investments. I see the accounts. Julia, he stammered. I see who the other partners are. It is not a fight you can win. They will bury you. They will bury all of us. Connor, I said, gripping the phone. Are you in trouble? I have to go, he said. Connor. The line clicked. He was gone. Monday brought the audit. I was in the middle of teaching The Great Gatsby, explaining the symbolism of the green light. When the door opened, 2 people walked in. One was Dr. Thorne. The other was a woman I didn't recognize, holding a clipboard and wearing a gray suit that looked like armor. Ms. Foster, Doctor, Thorne said. This is Ms. Valerius from District Compliance. She is here to conduct a random procedural audit. Right now I asked. I am teaching. Proceed as normal. Ms. Valerius said. She didn't look at me. She walked to the back of the room and started opening cabinets. I tried to continue the lesson. So, Gatsby believes that the past can be repeated. Clack, clack, clack. Ms. Valerius was pulling binders off the shelf, checking them, and stacking them on the floor. He reaches for the green light. Ms. Foster, Ms. Valerius interrupted. Why are these student permission slips filed chronologically instead of alphabetically? I stopped. Because I collect them by date. That is a violation of district policy. 44B, she said, making a mark on her clipboard. Improper data storage. She moved to the walls. This poster, she said, pointing to a grammar chart I had made by hand. It covers more than 20% of the wall surface area. That is a fire code violation. Take it down. Now, I asked. Now, she said. I had to stop the class. My students watched in stunned silence as I ripped the poster off the wall, the tape tearing the paper. I felt humiliated. I felt small. She spent 2 hours in my room. She measured the distance between desks. She checked the expiration dates on the hand sanitizer. She cited me for having a personal coffee mug on my desk, potential unauthorized liquid hazard. By the time she left, I had a citation list 3 pages long. None of it had anything to do with teaching. All of it was designed to break me. My students filed out silently when the bell rang. Leo, the boy with the hoodie, stopped at my desk. "Miss Foster," he said. "Yeah, Leo," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That lady was mean." He said. I forced a smile. "It is just paperwork." "Leo, go to lunch." I was packing up my bag at the end of the day, feeling utterly defeated. When my email pinged, it wasn't a district email. It was a personal one, sent to the address I rarely used. Subject: "Not all of us are blind. Ms. Foster, my name is Reed Vancourt. I write for the City Chronicle. I have been hearing stories about a certain system migration that seems to be hiding a lot of interesting things, and I hear there is a teacher who isn't playing ball. I would like to buy you a coffee, off the record, no notebooks, just a conversation." I stared at the screen. Reed Vancourt. I knew the name. He was an investigative reporter who had broken the story on the city council zoning scandal 3 years ago. He was serious. I typed a reply before I could talk myself out of it. The roasted bean on 4th, 5:00 p.m., today. Reed Vancourt looked exactly like a journalist should. He was disheveled, wore a corduroy jacket that had seen better days, and had eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in a week. He was waiting for me at a back table. He didn't have a notepad out. "Julia Foster," he said, standing up to shake my hand. "Thanks for coming." I sat down. I kept my bag on my lap. "You said off the record." I said, "Completely," he said. "Look, I will be honest. I have sources in the district office, low-level clerks who are tired of being told to shred things. They tell me there is a panic behind the scenes, and your name keeps coming up. Panic about what I asked, about the North Bridge Foundation," he said, "and about a teacher who has a timeline of invoices." I went cold. "How do you know about the timeline?" Reed smiled grimly. "Because this town is leaky. Julia, people talk. The question is, do you have the receipts? Because I can write a story about rumors, and they will ignore it, if I write a story with receipts. They have to answer." I hesitated. I thought about Tessa's warning. You can be right and still get crushed. But I was already being crushed. I was on a PIP. My classroom was being dismantled. My family was ashamed of me. I had nothing left to lose except the truth. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the folder I had retrieved from my boot. I pushed it across the table. "This is everything," I said. "The consulting fees, the media coaching billed to special ed, the book cancellations." Reed opened the folder. He scanned the first few pages. His eyebrows shot up. "Media coaching," he muttered. "Jesus, they are billing the taxpayers to learn how to lie to the taxpayers." He looked up at me. "This is dynamite. Julia, this connects the superintendent to the board to the vendor. It is a racket." "Can you publish it?" I asked. "I need to verify it." He said, "Give me 48 hours. I will run the invoice numbers against the state vendor database. If this checks out. We are going front page on Sunday." I felt a surge of hope. Finally, someone was going to fight with me. "Thank you," I said. The hope lasted exactly 12 hours. The next morning, before the first bell rang, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking: Briar Glen District. Announces successful financial audit. I clicked the link. It was a press release from the district. Superintendent Thorne is pleased to announce that an independent internal review has found 0 irregularities in district spending. "We are committed to transparency," Thorne said. "Recent rumors of mismanagement are baseless and driven by misinformation." I stood in the middle of my classroom, reading the words on my tiny screen. They knew. They knew Reed had the documents. They knew the story was coming, and they had preempted it. By releasing this statement now, they inoculated the public. If Reed published his story on Sunday, it would look like old news. It would look like he was digging up dirt that had already been investigated and cleared. I texted Reed. "Did you see it?" He replied instantly. "Yeah, they spooked. Someone tipped them off that I had the file." "Who?" I asked. "I don't know." He wrote, "But be careful. Julia, if they are burning sources to kill a story this fast, they are desperate." I sat down at my desk. I felt exposed, naked. Someone was watching me. Maybe they were reading my texts. Maybe they were tracking my car. Then, another email. It was the tipster. Truth Seeker 8892. Subject: You missed the biggest piece. I opened it, my fingers trembling. They preempted the story because they are protecting the linchpin. You are focusing on North Bridge. Look at the vendor supplying the virtual tutoring software that replaced your program. The company is called Vector Solutions. Check the incorporation papers for Vector Solutions. Look at the registered agent. It is Denise Arkwell's brother. I gasped. Denise Arkwell, the board member who preached authenticity, the woman who told me to stop worrying about logistics. Her brother owned the company that got the contract when our tutors were fired. It wasn't just corruption, it was nepotism. It was a family business. I quickly searched the state business registry on my laptop. Vector Solutions. There it was. Registered agent Thomas Arkwell, and the address. It was a P.O. box in the same building as Connor's investment firm. My stomach dropped. Connor, a client's education foundation, tax efficiency. Certain people don't lose. It wasn't just that Connor knew them. Connor was banking them. His firm was managing the money that Denise Arkwell's brother was stealing from my students. I closed my laptop. The room felt incredibly small. I looked around at the empty desks, the peeling varnish, the missing books. It wasn't just a few bad invoices. It was a machine, a perfectly calibrated machine designed to turn public tax dollars into private wealth, and it was grinding up my students to fuel the engine. And everyone my principal, the board, my own brother was pretending it was normal. They were all smiling and eating roast beef and talking about innovation, while they cannibalized the future. Terror washed over me, not the sharp fear of getting caught, but the deep, heavy dread of realizing you are standing alone in a room full of monsters who think they are the heroes. I was not just fighting the district anymore, I was fighting my own blood, and I knew, with a sickening certainty, that if I kept going, I wouldn't just lose my job, I would lose my family. I put my head in my hands. The bell rang. The students began to drift in. "Good morning. Miss Foster," Leo said, sliding into his seat. I looked up. I looked at his frayed hoodie. I looked at the pencil I had given him. "Good morning. Leo," I whispered. I couldn't stop. I couldn't unknow this. If I had to burn my life down to warm this classroom, then I would strike the match. The box on my desk was small. It was a standard-issue cardboard archive box, the kind used for storing tax returns or old photos. Now, it held the last 8 years of my life, my Teacher of the Year plaque. The mug Leo had given me that said, "World's Okayest Teacher," a dried rose from a prom chaperone gig 3 years ago, Dr. Thorne stood by the door, his hands clasped behind his back, watching me pack with the benevolence of an executioner who had just sharpened the axe. "This is not a punishment. Julia," he said for the third time, "I need you to hear me. This is a wellness intervention." I placed my stapler into the box. A wellness intervention. I repeated flatly, "We see the stress you are under," he said, "the outbursts, the fixation on administrative minutia. It is affecting your health. The district cares about its people. We want you to take this remote assignment to decompress. You will handle data entry for the curriculum audit from home. No students, no classroom management, just quiet, focused work." He made it sound like a spa retreat. In reality, it was solitary confinement. They were removing me from the building so I could not witness anything else. They were cutting the nerve so the brain wouldn't feel the pain. I picked up the box. It wasn't heavy, but it felt like lead in my arms. "How long is the assignment?" I asked. "Indefinite," he said, "until we feel you are recalibrated." I walked past him. I didn't say goodbye. I walked down the hallway during fourth period. When the corridors were empty and silent, I passed room 304. The door was closed. I could hear the muffled sound of a substitute teacher's voice, probably playing a movie, probably keeping them quiet. I wanted to open the door. I wanted to tell Leo to keep writing. I wanted to tell the girl in the front row to apply for that scholarship, but I kept walking. If I stopped, I would cry. And I refused to give Dr. Thorn the satisfaction of seeing tears. I walked out to the parking lot, put the box in the passenger seat of my 10-year-old sedan, and drove away. I was 33 years old, and I had just been sent to my room. My apartment had always been my sanctuary, a small one-bedroom on the second floor of a converted Victorian house in the historic district. Now, it was a cell. The remote duties doctor Thorn had assigned me were a joke. Every morning at 8 o'clock, I had to log into a secure portal and verify student ID numbers against a master list. It was work a computer script could have done in 4 seconds. They were making me do it manually, row by row, just to prove they owned my time. The silence was the worst part. For a decade, my days had been filled with the chaotic, vibrant noise of teenagers' laughter, drama, questions, the shuffling of backpacks. Now, the only sound was the hum of my refrigerator and the ticking of the clock. On the 3rd day of my exile, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. "Elaine, just checking in. Aunt Barb said she saw your car at home during the day. Are you off this week?" I stared at the screen. Aunt Barb, the neighborhood watch of Briar Glen. Julia. "I am working from home for a bit. Administrative project." Elaine. "Oh, that sounds nice. Less stress. You were looking so haggard lately. Maybe you can finally get to the gym or get your hair done. You need to take care of your presentation." Julia. I didn't reply. It wasn't concern. It was optics. She didn't want to know if I was okay. She wanted to know if I was presentable. She wanted to ensure that whatever drama I was causing had been contained so she could go back to her bridge club without shame. I put the phone face down on the table. Then, a different notification. An encrypted message app I had installed on Reed Vancourt's advice. "Reed, we need to talk. Big development. Can you meet at the park?" It was raining when I met Reed. He was standing under a dripping oak tree, looking more exhausted than before. He wasn't wearing his usual cynical smirk. He looked rattled. I walked up to him, pulling my coat tighter. "What is it?" I asked. "Did they fire you?" "No." He said, "It is bigger than that." He pulled a folded newspaper from his pocket, not the City Chronicle, but a national paper. "My editor killed the story," Reed said. He said the evidence was circumstantial, and that the district's preemptive statement killed the news hook. I felt the ground drop out from under me. "So that is it?" I asked. "We lost no," Reed said. He stepped closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Because while my editor was killing it, I sent the file to a friend of mine. She is a producer for the Morning Hour." My eyes went wide. The Morning Hour was the biggest news program in the country. It was the show my parents watched every single day with their coffee. "Reed," I said, That is huge." "She called me this morning," Reed said. "Julia, this isn't just Briar Glen. She ran the vendor names. Vector Solutions, Northbridge, Apex Strategies. They are popping up in 6 other districts across the state. It is a franchise. They go into struggling districts, promise efficiency, gut the services, and funnel the money into these shell companies." He looked at me with an intensity that scared me. "She wants to run the segment," he said, "but she needs a face. She needs the teacher who saw it happen." "Me?" I shook my head. No way. I am already on a performance plan. If I go on national TV, I will never work in education again." "You might not work in education again anyway," Reed said brutally. "They are already erasing you. Julia, they sent you home to rot." I looked at the wet grass. He was right. I was ghost-walking through my own career. "I cannot do it. Reed," I said, "my family, they will disown me." Reed sighed. He didn't push. He just nodded. "Okay," he said. "But before you decide for sure, you should look at the district website today. There was a new contract approved at last night's board meeting." "What contract?" "Just look," he said. I went home and opened my laptop. I navigated to the district's transparency portal, a section of the site that was usually empty. There was a new press release posted at 9 in the morning. Briar Glen partners with Vector Solutions for premier virtual learning experience. I clicked the link. It was a flashy PDF brochure, introducing the Smart Tutor Initiative. Why rely on old-fashioned peer tutoring when you can have AI-driven support 24/7, powered by the Northbridge Learning Foundation? I scrolled down to the cost. The contract was for $200,000 a year. I did the math in my head. The peer tutoring program, the one they canceled because of budget cuts, cost $12,000 a year in stipends for teachers like Mrs. Higgins. They had fired the human beings to hire a software program that cost 16 times as much. And then I saw the logo at the bottom of the brochure. Vector Solutions, a family of educational partners. I zoomed in. The logo was a stylized bridge. The same bridge that was on the letterhead of the consultants who had billed us for media coaching. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just theft. It was replacement. They were systematically removing people teachers, tutors, nurses, and replacing them with vendors owned by their friends. I was staring at the screen when my phone rang. It was Connor. I hesitated. I hadn't spoken to him since he hung up on me. I swiped answer. "Hello," I said. "Jules," he said. His voice was thick, like he had been drinking or crying, or both. "Connor, are you okay? I need you to promise me something," he said. He sounded breathless. "What? Promise me you will not say my name. What are you talking about? I went to the dinner. Jules, the one Reed Vancourt is asking around about. The donor dinner at the country club." I gripped the phone. "You went to a dinner with Northbridge. Denise invited me." He said, "It was supposed to be a networking thing. High net worth individuals. She gave a speech about streamlining public education, about how the public sector is a bloated carcass and the private sector needs to harvest the meat." "Harvest the meat," I repeated. "That is disgusting." "I know," he said. "I know. But Jules, everyone was there. The mayor, the developers, and I introduced them to some clients. Silence stretched between us. "You funneled money to them," I whispered. "I didn't know it was dirty," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I thought it was just aggressive growth. I thought it was tax optimization. But then you started asking questions, and I looked at the ledgers. Jules, the money isn't going to services. It is going to offshore accounts. It is a wash. Then you have to tell someone. Connor, you have to go to the police." "I cannot," he wailed. "I signed off on the due diligence. If this blows up, I am liable. I could lose my license. I could go to jail." "So you want me to stay quiet?" I asked. "To save your license. Just let it go," he begged. "Please, Dad would die if I got indicted. Think about the family. Think about Mom. Think about the family." I thought about Leo shivering in his hoodie. I thought about Davis choking on the floor while I ran for an EpiPen. I cannot promise that. "Connor," I said. "Julia, please," I hung up. My hand was shaking so hard, I dropped the phone on the couch. My own brother. He wasn't the mastermind, but he was the grease in the gears. He had traded his integrity for a seat at the table, and now he wanted me to pay the bill. The next morning, the intimidation shifted from emotional to legal. A courier knocked on my door at 10 o'clock. He handed me a thick envelope from a law firm in the capital. Sterling, Holloway Associates. I opened it. "Cease and desist demand. Dear Ms. Foster, we represent the Briar Glen School District and the Northbridge Learning Foundation. It has come to our attention that you are in unauthorized possession of proprietary, confidential, and privileged documents belonging to our clients. You are hereby ordered to return all physical and digital copies of said documents immediately. Furthermore, you are to cease making defamatory statements regarding the financial practices of the district. Failure to comply will result in immediate legal action, including civil litigation for damages and potential criminal referral for theft of intellectual property." I sat down on the floor of my hallway. Theft. They were accusing me of stealing. Me. The woman who bought pencils for her students. It was a bullying tactic. I knew that, but it was effective. The letterhead was heavy. The threat of criminal referral made my breath hitch. They were telling me that if I spoke, they wouldn't just fire me. They would brand me a criminal. They would paint me as a disgruntled employee who stole secrets to settle a score. I read the letter again. Defamatory statements. The truth is only defamation if you cannot prove it. I needed fresh air. I put on my coat and walked down the stairs to the mailroom of my apartment building. I needed to get out of the box. As I walked back up to the vestibule, I bumped into my landlord, Mr. Henderson. He was a nice man. Usually, he had fixed my radiator last winter without complaining. "Oh, Julia," he said, looking at his shoes. "I was just coming to slip a note under your door." "A note?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I am really sorry about this, but I'm not going to be able to renew your lease next month." I stared at him. Why I have never missed a payment. I know, he said. "You are a great tenant, but we are doing renovations. Big structural stuff. Need the unit empty." "Renovations," I said. "Mr. Henderson, you just painted the hallway last month. It is the pipes." He said quickly, "Plumbing. Very messy. You have 30 days. He handed me a white envelope and walked away fast, disappearing into his office. I stood there, holding the eviction notice. I went back upstairs. I opened my laptop and went to the rental listing site. Zillow. I typed in my address. There it was. Unit 2B. Available immediately. The rent was listed at $300 more a month. There was no mention of renovations. I called the rental office number listed on the site. Blocking my caller ID. "Hi," I said, affecting a cheerful voice. "I am inquiring about the unit on Elm Street. Is it available?" "Oh, yes," the receptionist chirped. "It is a lovely unit, ready for move-in next month. We just need a tenant with good credit." I hung up. It wasn't renovations. Someone had called him. Someone had leaned on him. Maybe Denise Arkwell knew the building owner. Maybe Connor's firm held the mortgage. They were systematically dismantling my life. First my job, then my reputation, now my home. I sat on my couch and looked around the room. I had painted these walls. I had bought that rug. This was the only place in the world that was mine. And they were taking it. I called Tessa. I was crying so hard I could barely speak. "Tessa," I choked out. "They are evicting me." "I will be there in 10 minutes, she said. She arrived with boxes and a bottle of wine. She didn't ask questions. She just started packing. "You are staying with me," she said. "I have the pull-out couch. It is lumpy, but it is safe. I feel so humiliated." I said, wiping my eyes, "I am 33. Tessa, I am sleeping on my best friend's couch because I cannot keep an apartment. You are not sleeping on my couch because you are a failure," Tessa said fiercely. "You are sleeping on my couch because you are in a war, and in a war, you take shelter where you can find it." We packed the car in silence. As we carried the last box down, I saw a black SUV parked across the street. The windows were tinted. Is that someone watching us?" I whispered. Tessa looked. Her jaw tightened. "Just get in the car." "Julia," she said, "don't look at them." That night, lying on Tessa's lumpy sofa, I called the state oversight office again. I needed to know if they could help me, if I gave them everything. Could they stop the eviction? Could they stop the letters? Agent Halloway answered. "Agent Halloway," I said, "it is Julia Foster. They are coming after me. They evicted me. They sent a cease and desist." I heard her sigh on the other end. "I am sorry. Ms. Foster," she said, "can you do anything I asked? Can you issue a protective order, witness intimidation charges?" "Not yet," she said. "The investigation is still in the preliminary phase. We haven't filed charges yet. Until we do, you are a private citizen involved in a civil dispute." "A civil dispute," I almost laughed. "They are destroying my life, Ms. Foster. Listen to me," she said, her voice low. "We cannot guarantee your protection right now. My advice, keep your head down. Avoid predictable routines. Do not go to the same grocery store every week. Do not take the same route to your parents' house." I froze. "Avoid predictable routines," I repeated. "You are dealing with people who have a lot to lose," she said. "Desperate people do desperate things. Just be careful." She hung up. I stared at the ceiling. The state couldn't help me. The district was hunting me. My family was compromised. I was completely alone. I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to the traffic outside Tessa's window. I thought about the predictable routines. I thought about the black SUV. They wanted me to disappear. They wanted me to be so scared, so broken, so exhausted that I would just fade away. They wanted me to take a job in another state, change my name, and pretend none of this happened. And if I did that, Vector Solutions would keep billing millions. The bridge would keep funneling cash. And Leo would never get a pencil that didn't break. If I stayed quiet, I wasn't just safe, I was an accomplice. I sat up. It was 4 a.m. I grabbed my phone. I opened the encrypted app. Julia Reed, he replied in seconds. He was awake too. Reed, I am here. Julia. Tell your friend at the morning hour, I will do it. 3 dots danced on the screen. Reed, are you sure? Once we push this button, there is no going back. Julia, I know, but I have conditions. Reed, name them. Julia, I will not read a script. I will not let them turn me into a sob story. I speak only to what I witnessed. I want the invoices shown on screen, and I want it live. No editing. Read live is risky. They might try to cut you off. Julia, that is why I want it live. If they cut me off. The silence speaks louder than I ever could. Read. Okay, I will call her. Pack a bag. We need to get you to New York tonight. We cannot risk you being in Briar Glen when the promo drops. I put the phone down. I looked at my hands. They were steady. I wasn't a hero. I was a teacher who had lost her classroom, a daughter who had lost her parents' respect, and a woman who had lost her home. But I still had my voice. And for 1 hour, on national television, I was going to make sure that my father, my mother, my brother, and Dr. Thorne had to listen to it. I got up and started to dress. The war was over. The revolution was about to begin. New York City was loud. It was a different kind of loud than the hallways of Briar Glen High. It was a mechanical, indifferent roar that never stopped. I sat in a small conference room on the 34th floor of a glass tower in Midtown, looking out at the skyline. Across the table sat Celia Rowan. She was a pro bono attorney Reed had found for me, a woman who specialized in whistleblower protection. She had hair cut so sharp it could cut glass and eyes that didn't blink enough. Do it again, Celia said. I sighed. I rubbed my temples. I saw the invoices on the copier. I said, they showed payments to Northbridge Learning Foundation. Stop, Celia snapped. She slapped her hand on the table. I jumped. What, you sound defensive, she said. You are raising the pitch of your voice at the end of the sentence. It makes you sound like you are asking for permission to be believed. You are not asking. Julia, you are telling. She leaned forward. They are going to come at you hard. Julia, the district's lawyers will not be in the room, but their spirit will be. The host will play devil's advocate. He will say, isn't it true you were on a performance plan? Isn't it true you were stressed? If you get angry, you lose. If you cry, you lose. If you get sarcastic, you are just a disgruntled employee. So what do? I asked. I felt like a student failing a test I hadn't studied for. You be the concrete, she said. You are boring. You are factual. You are a recorder. You do not have feelings. You have dates. You have amounts. You have invoice numbers. She slid a piece of paper toward me. Try again. I took a breath. I looked at the paper. On November 4th, I reviewed a document labeled Invoice 4492. I said, my voice was lower, steadier. It detailed a payment of $12,000 for media coaching, billed to the Special Education Budget Code. Celia nodded slowly. Better, she said. Again, we did it for 6 hours. We went through every possible question, every trap. By the time we finished, my throat was raw, but my mind felt different. It felt armored. I wasn't Julia the daughter or Julia the sister anymore. I was Julia the witness. That evening, back in the small hotel room the network had booked for me under a fake name. My phone rang. It was my mother. I hesitated. I looked at the screen. Elaine Foster. I picked up. Hello, I said. Julia, she chirped. The signal was clear, but she sounded a million miles away. We heard from Aunt Barb that you are in New York. Is it true? Yes, I said. I am doing an interview. Mom, I know, she said. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Listen, I was thinking about what you are going to wear. You know, high-definition cameras are unforgiving. Do not wear red. It washes you out. And for heaven's sake, make sure they use a matte powder. You tend to get shiny when you are nervous. I sat on the edge of the bed. I was about to expose a corruption ring that had stolen millions from children, and my mother was worried about my T-zone. I have a stylist. Mom, I said, the network provides one. Oh, good, she said. That is a relief. And Julia? Yes. Try to look pleasant, she said. You have such a heavy face when you are serious. You don't want people to think you are bitter. Just soften your eyes a little. Smile with them. It makes you look more trustworthy. It was a direction, like I was an actress in a play she was directing. Is Dad there? I asked. He is right here, she said. There was a shuffling sound, and then my father's voice came on the line. Which network? He asked. No hello. Just the business. The morning hour. I said. He whistled. A low, appreciative sound. That is the big leagues, he said. National reach, millions of viewers. Yeah, I said. You know, he said, his voice taking on a puffed-up quality. I always told the guys at the club that you had a flair for the dramatic. Being on national TV, that is something. That is leverage. Julia, if you play this right, you could pivot, get a consulting gig, write a book. I closed my eyes. It is not a career move. Dad, I said, it is a crime report. Sure, he said dismissively. But exposure is exposure. Just make sure you mention the family name clearly. Foster. We don't want them misspelling it in the chyron. He didn't ask if I was safe. He didn't ask if I was scared. He wanted to know if the font would be legible. They hung up 5 minutes later. I stared at the phone. For 33 years, I had wanted them to see me. I had wanted them to value what I did. And now, they finally were interested not because I was doing something right, but because I was doing something famous. It made me feel hollowed out, like a pumpkin carved for a holiday I didn't celebrate. A knock at the door. It was Reed. He looked grim. He walked in and paced the small room, running a hand through his hair. We have a problem, he said. What? I asked. Did they cancel the segment? He said. But the district knows the clock is ticking. My source says they just called an emergency closed-door board meeting for tonight. 7 o'clock. Tonight, I asked. But public meetings require 48 hours of notice. Not if they declare an emergency executive session, Reed said. They are going to use the loophole. They are going to scrub the records. They are going to retroactively approve every single one of those illegal contracts before you go on air. So when I show the invoices, they will say it was all board approved. Exactly, Reed said. They are burying the bodies. Julia, they are going to make it look like everything was dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I felt a surge of panic. If they sanitized the record tonight, my interview tomorrow would look like a lie. Is there anything we can do? I asked. Reed stopped pacing. He looked at me, and I saw a flash of pity in his eyes. There is one more thing, he said, and you are not going to like it. What I ran the ownership structure of Vector Solutions again. He said, I dug deeper into the financial disclosures. You know how Connor said he just introduced them to clients? Yeah. I said, he lied. Reed said, he pulled a tablet out of his bag and tapped the screen. He showed me a complex diagram of shell companies and holding firms. Vector Solutions is backed by a private equity fund. Reed said, the fund is called Blue Meridian Capital. Okay, I said. So look at the managing partner of Blue Meridian. Reed said. I looked. Connor Foster. The room spun. He doesn't just manage their money. Julia, Reed said softly. He is the money. He sits on the board of the fund that owns the vendor. Every time Vector Solutions gets a contract, every time they fire a tutor and install that software, Connor's fund takes a 20% cut. I sat back on the bed. The mattress springs creaked. He is not just a cog, I whispered. He is the engine. Reed nodded. If you go on air tomorrow and name Vector Solutions, he said, you are not just embarrassing your brother, you are destroying him. He will be investigated by the SEC. He will likely go to prison for conflict of interest and fraud. I stared at the wall. I thought about Connor's boat. I thought about his cashmere sweaters. I thought about him telling me that certain people don't lose. He built his empire on the graves of my students' education. Do you still want to do it? Reed asked. I looked at him. Give me the phone, I said. I called Connor. He answered on the first ring. It was quiet where he was. Hello, he said. He sounded small. I know about Blue Meridian. I said. The silence on the other end was absolute. It was the silence of a man standing on a trapdoor that had just opened. Julia, he whispered, you own it. I said, you own the company that fired Mrs. Higgins. You own the company that stole the library books. I don't own it, he stammered. I manage the fund. It is a passive investment. Don't lie to me, I shouted. For the first time. I broke Celia's rule. I wasn't the concrete. I was the fire. You took 20%. You bought that sports car with money that was supposed to buy EpiPens. It is not that simple, he yelled back. His voice cracked, high and desperate. You do not understand the pressure. Julia. Dad expects things. He expects greatness. So you stole it, I asked. I didn't steal it. I leveraged it. Everyone does it. He was crying now. Listen to me. I had to be the successful one. I had to be. Because you were always the good one. What I asked. You think I didn't see it? He said. You with your little classroom. You with your noble poverty. You were happy. You were actually happy. And it drove me insane. I have millions of dollars and I wake up every morning terrified. You have nothing and you sleep like a baby. I needed to win. Julia. I needed to show them that I was the winner. I listened to him weep. It was a pathetic, ugly sound. He had destroyed my school not out of greed, but out of envy. He hated that I was content with a life he considered beneath him. Connor. I said, you have to turn yourself in. I cannot. He sobbed. I cannot. It will kill Dad. It is going to kill him anyway. I said, because I am going on TV tomorrow, and I'm going to tell the truth. Julia, please, he begged. Please, I am your brother. We played in the sandbox together. I taught you how to ride a bike. Don't do this. I remembered him teaching me to ride a bike. I remembered him holding the back of the seat. I remembered trusting him not to let go. He had let go a long time ago. I am sorry. Connor, I said. I hung up. 2 hours later. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I thought it might be Reed. Hello, Julia, a woman's voice said. Smooth, vanilla. Denise Arkwell. I stiffened. How did you get this number? I have resources. She said pleasantly. Look, Julia, I know you are in New York. I know you are scheduled for the morning hour, but I think we can find a better resolution. I am not interested. I said, just listen, she said. I am holding a contract in my hand. It is a settlement agreement. I waited. We are prepared to offer you a retroactive severance package, she said. 1 year of full salary, plus a guaranteed placement in the Cherry Creek district, very wealthy, very quiet, and a glowing letter of recommendation from Superintendent Thorne. And what do I have to do? I asked. Just sign a standard confidentiality agreement, she said, and issue a brief statement saying that your concerns were based on a misunderstanding of district accounting protocols. That is all. You get your life back. You get a better job. And this whole ugly mess goes away. I closed my eyes. A year's salary. A job in a district where the ceilings didn't leak. No more fighting. No more fear. No more destroying my brother. I could just stop. The temptation washed over me like a warm bath. I was so tired. I was so incredibly tired of being brave. I can email it to you right now, Denise said, sensing my hesitation. Just e-sign it. And the wire transfer happens tonight. You can skip the interview. You can go out for a nice dinner in the city. I thought about the dinner. I thought about the peace. Then I thought about the boy named Davis. I thought about his face turning purple. I thought about the empty box on the wall. If I signed that paper, I was saying that Davis didn't matter. I was saying that his life was worth exactly 1 year of my salary. I opened my eyes. Denise? I said, yes, dear, do you know what the scary thing is? I asked, what you actually think that is a fair trade. I said, you think my silence is for sale. Everything is for sale. Julia, she said coldly. Not this? I said, not me. I hung up the phone. The final blow came 10 minutes later. My mother called again. I picked up, thinking she was going to ask about shoes. You ungrateful little wretch. She hissed. Mom Connor just called me, she said. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was a low, animal growl. He told me what you are planning to do. He told me you are going to name his fund. He is involved. Mom, I said. He is. I do not care, she screamed. I do not care. He is your brother. He is the only one in this family who has actually achieved something. And you are going to ruin him because you are jealous. Jealous? I shouted back. He stole from children. He did business, she yelled. That is how the world works, Julia. But you wouldn't know that, would you? Because you are just a lowly teacher. You have never built anything in your life. The words hit me like physical slaps. Just a lowly teacher. Listen to me, she said, her voice dropping to a terrifying calm. If you say his name on that television show, if you ruin this family, you are dead to us. Do you understand? I will change the locks. I will write you out of the will. You will never step foot in this house again. You will be an orphan. Julia. I stood in the middle of the hotel room. The city lights of New York were blurring through the window. Is that it? I asked. My voice was shaking, but not with fear, with a strange, final clarity. Is that the price of your love, that I have to let them steal? You have to protect the family, she said. That is the only rule. Then I guess I am an orphan, I said. I hung up. I turned off the phone. I sat down on the floor and cried. I cried for the little girl who used to try so hard to please them. I cried for the Sunday dinners that were a lie. I cried for the brother I had lost, but I didn't cry for long, because Celia was right. If I cried, I lost. I went to the bathroom. I washed my face. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were red, but they were clear. I didn't need matte powder. I didn't need a smile. I needed the truth. Morning, 5 a.m. The car was waiting downstairs. I put on my navy blazer. I checked my bag. I had the invoices. I had the timeline. I turned my phone back on, just to check the time. It exploded with notifications. I looked at the screen. My stomach turned over. A blog post had been published overnight on a popular local news aggregator. It was titled Briar Glen Whistleblower, Linked to Inappropriate Conduct with Staff Member. I clicked it. It was an anonymous letter from a concerned parent. It claimed that I had been asked to leave the building not because of a curriculum audit, but because I was having an illicit affair with Harlan DeWitt, the 60-year-old history teacher. It claimed I was unstable, erotomaniac, and looking for attention to cover up my indiscretions. It was a lie so gross, so absurd, that it took my breath away. Harlan was happily married. He was a grandfather. He was my mentor. But the comments section was already filling up. Typical. Always the ones who scream the loudest. I heard she was crazy. Is this the woman going on TV disgusting? They were poisoning the well. They were trying to make me radioactive before I even sat in the chair. I felt a wave of nausea. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to hide under the covers. Reed knocked on the door. Did you see it? He asked. He looked furious. Yeah, I said. It is a smear. He said. Standard playbook. Distract, discredit, destroy. It is working, I said, pointing to the comments. Only if you let it, Reed said. He grabbed my shoulders. Julia, listen to me. This proves they are terrified. They are throwing sludge because they have no shield. You walk through it. You walk right through it, and you do not stop. I took a deep breath. I thought about the wellness intervention. I thought about the system migration. I thought about the renovations. They had taken my job. They had taken my home. They had taken my family. And now they were trying to take my dignity. I picked up my bag. "Let's go," I said. The studio was freezing. It was a cavernous space filled with cables, lights, and people with headsets running around with clipboards. A production assistant led me to a chair. 5 minutes to air, someone shouted. A makeup artist came at me with a brush. "Just a little touch-up." "Hun," she said, "you look a little pale." I let her dab at my face. The host, a woman named Diane Sawyer-type figure, with perfect hair and eyes like sharks, sat across from me. She was reviewing her notes. "Ms. Foster," she said without looking up, "we are going to start with the incident with the student, then move to the documents. Keep your answers concise. We have 6 minutes. 6 minutes. 6 minutes to dismantle a machine that had been running for years." I looked at the monitor. I saw the feed from the control room. I saw myself. I looked small in the chair. I felt my hands shaking in my lap. I clasped them together hard, digging my nails into my palms. "Be the concrete," Celia had said. "Don't ruin the family," my mother had said. "Certain people don't lose," Connor had said. I closed my eyes for a second. I wasn't doing this for them. I wasn't doing this for me. I was doing this for the next Davis. I was doing this so that when the next kid couldn't breathe, there would be something in the box. 30 seconds, the floor director yelled. The red light on camera 2 blinked on. I opened my eyes. I looked straight into the lens. I wasn't shaking anymore. The red light on camera 2 was a small, unblinking eye. It was the only thing in the room that felt honest. "We are live in 5, 4, 3. The floor director counted down with his fingers, silently mouthing the last 2 numbers. The studio, which had been a hive of chaotic noise just seconds ago, dropped into a heavy, pressurized silence. The host turned to the camera. Her name was Elena Cross, and she was known for a journalistic style that was equal parts velvet and steel. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a professional tool, calibrated to invite trust. "Tonight," Elena said, her voice smooth and serious, "we take you inside one of the nation's most affluent school districts, where a battle is brewing over budgets, books, and the future of public education. Is it a case of necessary modernization or a story of systematic theft? Joining us is Julia Foster, a teacher caught in the middle of a firestorm in the city of Briar Glen." On the monitor to my left, I saw the B-roll footage the network had prepared. It was slick. It showed drone shots of Briar Glen High's new athletic complex. It showed happy students walking through the glass atrium. It showed the superintendent, Dr. Thorne, cutting a ribbon with a giant pair of scissors. Looking like the benevolent patriarch of a thriving community, it was a lie. It was a beautiful, high-definition lie. Elena turned to me. "Julia," she said, "thank you for being here. Thank you for having me." I said. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. It was steady, lower than usual, stripped of the nervous energy that had defined my last few weeks. Celia Rowan had drilled me well. "Be the concrete." Elena leaned forward, her expression sympathetic, but probing. "The district describes you as a passionate but perhaps overwhelmed educator," Elena said. "They claim that the cuts you are concerned about are standard budgetary adjustments. They say the system is working. When you see that footage, what goes through your mind?" I looked at the monitor. I looked at the shiny gym floor. "I see a facade." I said, "I see a building that looks perfect on the outside, while on the inside, we have students like Davis, a sophomore who almost died because an emergency medical box was empty. I see a library that has not purchased a new book in 14 months because the funds were diverted to a consulting firm." Elena raised an eyebrow. She had expected emotion. I gave her inventory. "You used the word diverted." Elena said, "That is a strong accusation. The district claims those funds were used for strategic planning." I didn't blink. Strategic planning does not cost $85,000 for a 3-week review. I said, "And it does not typically involve paying a firm called the Northbridge Learning Foundation, which shares a registered address with a shell company owned by a relative of a school board member." 30 miles away. In the manicured silence of the suburbs, I knew exactly what was happening. My father, Martin, would be sitting in his leather recliner, a glass of scotch resting on the coaster. My mother, Elaine, would be perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands gripping a throw pillow. When the segment started, Martin would have scoffed. "Look at this," he would say, gesturing at the screen with his glass. "She is doing it. She is actually airing our dirty laundry. Caught in the middle. Please." She threw herself in the middle. Elaine would be squinting at the television. "Her hair looks flat," she would say, "and that blazer, it is too dark. She looks severe. Why didn't she smile?" But then, I started speaking. I started citing the numbers. "Invoice 4492, I said to Elena. "Dated November 4th, $12,000 for media coaching. Billed to the Special Education Tier 3 grant, in that living room." Martin's hand would have frozen halfway to his mouth. The ice in his glass would have stopped clinking. He was a man of business. He understood ledgers. He understood that you could spin a narrative, but you could not spin an invoice number. "She is not reading a script," he would think. He would lean forward. The scoff would die in his throat. He would look at the face on the screen, my face, and for the first time in his life, he wouldn't see his disappointing daughter who chose a low-ceiling career. He would see a prosecutor. Is she right?" Elaine would whisper, looking at Martin for reassurance. Martin wouldn't answer. He would just watch, his face paling. As the realization hit him, this wasn't drama. This was evidence, and his daughter was the one holding the gavel. Back in the studio, the air shifted. Elena Cross sensed it too. She had expected a human interest story, a crying teacher telling a sad tale. Instead, she had a witness who had brought receipts. Elena tapped her earpiece. She looked down at a tablet on her desk. "Julia," she said, "you mentioned the North Bridge Learning Foundation. You claim they are being paid for services that were never rendered. I have the procurement logs." I said, "I have the cancellation notices for the tutoring program, and I have the contract for Vector Solutions, the virtual replacement, which cost the taxpayers $200,000 a year." Elena paused. She looked at the camera. "We actually have some breaking news on that front." Elena said. My stomach tightened. This was not in the prep. Reed had warned me that live TV was unpredictable. "Our producers reached out to the district for comment yesterday," Elena continued, "but we also received a package from an anonymous source within the district administration office late last night." She swiped her tablet, and a graphic appeared on the screen behind us. It was an email, a district internal email, from Dr. Aris Thorne to Denise Arkwell. Subject: Project Containment. Date: October 15th. "The Foster situation is escalating. She is asking too many questions about the vendor accounts. We need to implement the unstable narrative immediately. Place her on a performance improvement plan. Cite tone and professional alignment. If she continues to push, we will isolate her duties. We need to make her look like a liability before she talks to anyone outside." I stared at the screen. I had suspected it. I had felt it. But seeing it written down in black and white was different. The unstable narrative. They had planned it. They had scripted my destruction. Elena looked at me. "Julia," she said softly, "did you know about this email?" "No." I said. My voice trembled for the first time. But I lived it. The studio was dead silent. The camera zoomed in on my face. Reed had done this. He had given them the emails. He must have gotten them from his source at the last minute. It was a gift, but it was a terrifying one. It proved I wasn't crazy. It proved I wasn't paranoid. It proved I was a target. Martin would be standing up now. He would be standing in the middle of the living room, staring at the email on the screen. Project Containment. He knew that language. He worked in finance. He knew what it meant when executives started talking about containment. It meant they knew they were guilty, and they were trying to bury the witness. They went after her. Martin would mutter. He would look at Elaine. They went after our daughter. Elaine. They tried to frame her. Elaine would have her hand over her mouth. She wouldn't be worrying about my makeup anymore. She would be reading the words unstable narrative and realizing that the concern the district had shown her, the rumors Aunt Barb had repeated, were all part of a weaponized lie. "They played us," Martin would say. His face would be red, the veins in his neck standing out, not because he was a moral crusader, but because Fosters did not get played. Fosters were the ones in control. And these people, these cheap, small-town bureaucrats, had used his family as pawns, for the first time in years. Martin Foster would feel an emotion toward his daughter that wasn't disappointment. He would feel a protective, primal rage. Elena Cross was not done. "Julia," she said, "while we have been on air, the Briar Glen School District has issued a statement regarding your appearance here this morning." She picked up a piece of paper that a production assistant had just slid onto her desk. I braced myself. The statement reads, Elena began, "Ms. Foster is a disgruntled employee who is currently under investigation for the theft of confidential student records. Her claims are a desperate attempt to distract from her own professional misconduct. The district stands by its financial practices and will be pursuing legal action against Ms. Foster for defamation and breach of contract." Elena looked at me. "They are accusing you of theft. Julia, right now, live. How do you respond?" I looked at the camera. I imagined Dr. Thorne sitting in his office, watching this, sweating, typing out this statement with shaking fingers. I didn't get angry. I didn't shout. I remembered Celia. "Be the concrete." I responded with a question. I asked, "Theft of what?" Elena blinked. "Excuse me if I stole confidential student records." I said, "Then why are the only documents I have shown you financial invoices? Why am I showing you bills for media coaching and software contracts?" I leaned forward. "I have not shared a single student's name," I said. "I have not shared a single grade. I have protected my students' privacy more than the district has protected their education." I pointed to the paper in Elena's hand. "That statement is not a defense," I said. "It is a confirmation. That email you just showed said they would try to make me look like a liability. And 5 minutes later, they send a statement calling me a liability. They are following their own script." Elena stared at me. A slow, genuine smile spread across her face. It was the smile of a predator who realized she was sitting next to a fellow hunter. "That is a powerful point." Elena said, "The commercial break hit. Clear the floor." Director yelled, 2 minutes. The studio erupted into noise again. Makeup artists rushed in. Producers were typing furiously on their phones. Elena turned to me. "You are doing incredible," she said. Her voice was low. "That email killed them. You know that, right?" "They are dead in the water." I nodded. Numb. A producer ran up to me, holding my phone. "Ms. Foster," he said, "you might want to see this. It is buzzing off the hook." I took the phone. The screen was a blur of notifications, text messages, Twitter mentions, Instagram tags, hero, liar, thank you, traitor. I had her for English in 2018. She bought me a winter coat. She is just looking for a book deal. It was a tsunami. Fame had arrived, just like Reed promised, but it didn't feel like a spotlight. It felt like a storm. I was standing in the center of it, and there was no shelter. I saw a text from Harlan DeWitt. "Harlan. Just watched. Proud of you. Kid, the lounge is going crazy. We are all with you." I saw a text from Tessa. "Tessa, you are a legend. Also don't read the comments." And then, the calls started. Dad, Mom, Connor. The names flashed on the screen, one after another. I stared at them. 10 minutes ago. I would have given anything for them to call. I would have begged for their validation. But now I looked at the invoice I was holding. I looked at the red light on the camera that was about to turn back on. I handed the phone back to the producer. "Turn it off," I said. "We are back in 5, 4. Elena Cross turned to the camera. "We are back with Julia Foster, the whistleblower teacher from Briar Glen. Julia, we have about a minute left." She clasped her hands. "You have risked your career to come here," she said. "You have been evicted. You have been threatened with legal action. You have been alienated from your family." She paused. letting the weight of that list hang in the air. If you could say one thing to the people who tried to shut you up, to the administrators, to the board members, to the people writing those emails, what would it be? It was the setup, the soundbite moment. She wanted me to deliver a zinger. She wanted me to say, "I am coming for you," or "You can't hide." She wanted a movie line. I thought about Dr. Thorne. I thought about Denise Arkwell. I thought about Connor. I looked into the lens. I don't have anything to say to them. I said. Elena looked surprised. No, I said, because they already know what they did. They know the cost. They see the numbers every day. I shifted my gaze. I looked through the camera, past the studio, past the district office, out to the people watching in their kitchens and living rooms. I want to speak to the parents, I said, and to the taxpayers. I took a breath. They want you to believe that education is expensive. I said, they tell you that we have to cut tutoring programs and art classes and nurses because there isn't enough money. I held up the invoice for the media coaching. There is enough money. I said, it is just not being spent on your children. It is being spent on consultants who teach administrators how to lie to you. It is being spent on software that replaces teachers with algorithms. It is being spent on private equity firms that view your child's learning gap as a profit margin. I lowered the paper. Don't listen to the speeches. I said, don't look at the shiny brochures. Demand the invoices. Ask to see the check register. Because if you don't look at the ledger, they will sell the future right out from under you, and they will call it innovation. I held the gaze of the camera for one more second. We deserve better, I said, and we can afford it. We just have to stop letting them steal it, and we are clear. The lights dimmed. The music swelled over the studio speakers. Elena Cross turned to me and shook my hand. Her grip was firm. That was hell of a close. She said, you just started a revolution. Julia. I unclipped the microphone from my lapel. My hands were finally steady. I walked off the set. The producer handed me my phone. It was still vibrating. I walked down the long concrete hallway toward the exit. The noise of the studio faded behind me. I looked at the screen. Missed call Dad 3. Missed call Mom 2. Missed call Connor 5. Voicemail Connor. Julia, please pick up. The SEC is calling. Please. I stood by the emergency exit door. Through the small window, I could see the streets of New York. It was raining. I could call them back. I could answer the phone and hear my father say he was proud of my leverage. I could hear my mother ask if I wanted to go shopping for a victory outfit. I could hear Connor beg me to issue a retraction to save his license. I could go back to being the daughter they wanted, or at least the daughter they now respected because I was powerful. But that respect was a transaction. It was based on the fact that I had won. If I had lost, if I had been crushed, like Tessa warned, they wouldn't be calling. They would be changing the locks. I thought about the lowly teacher. I liked her. I liked the woman who bought pencils. I liked the woman who ran for the EpiPen. She was worth more than their approval. I looked at the phone one last time. Then I slid it into my pocket without unlocking it. I pushed open the heavy steel door and stepped out into the rain. The air was cold and smelled of exhaust and wet pavement. It smelled like reality. I didn't know where I was going to live next week. I didn't know if I would ever teach in a classroom again. I didn't know if I would be sued into bankruptcy. But as I walked down the sidewalk, merging into the crowd of millions of strangers, I realized something. I wasn't lonely. For the first time in my life, I was entirely, completely free. And that was a wealth my brother would never understand. Thank you for listening to My Parents Called Me, Just a Lowly Teacher, until Dad saw me on national TV that night. I hope this story resonated with you. It is a story about finding your voice when the world tries to silence you, and realizing that your worth is defined by your actions, not your family's expectations. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please drop a comment below and tell me your city or country. And if you enjoyed Julia's journey, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, redemption, and the truth coming to light. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Julia's shoes? Would you have answered the phone at the end? Until next time, keep writing your own story.